Now Fianna Force is the headline attraction in the brand new Tír na nÓg Land of Eternal Youth area of the recently rebranded Emerald Park, formerly known as Tayto Park. It's the second ever installation of Vekoma's suspended thrill coaster model after the rather impressive Hals Kopff at Tripsdrill in Germany. This new coaster and area are a huge investment for the park, and it hopes to increase park attendance significantly. But is the ride any good? Let's take a closer look. Just before we start though, a quick bit of disclosure. I attended the park on the media day for this new area as part of the European Coaster Club. We were given free entry to the park, although only the rides in the new area and the big wooden coaster Kukulin were running. We were also given a free lunch and 2 free on-ride photos. I did pay for my own ice cream though, which was rather massive. The park was very generous to us, and it was a fantastic day. As always though, I try to keep my reviews fair and unbiased, but I think it's important to mention any perks or freebies that the park has provided. With that out of the way, let's check out the layout. Now Fianna Force starts with you climbing a 102 foot tall lift hill. At the top, you drop and twist to the right through a trench before you pull up out of the drop to the left in an Immelman turnaround. Next, you dive through another trench before flipping over into a corkscrew wing-over inversion. You then spiral upwards to the left and dip through the quest station. Next is a fast 0G roll before you turn to the left in a long upwards helix that then dips down to form a twisted airtime hill. You then enter 2 high-speed overbank S turns before braking to the right in another turn. A short bunny hop then follows before a side-banked bunny hop changes your direction to the left. There then follows a set of 2 more twisted bunny hops to the right and then to the left before you enter the long brake section and slowly return to the station. As you can see, it's a pretty substantial ride, and you probably noticed that this new area actually contains 2 separate coasters, the second one being called the Quest, and it's got a similar layout to Light Explorers at Energylandia or Savin at Far Up Summerland. I'm going to be focusing on Fianna Force though, as it's obviously the headline coaster here. The first part of the ride after the drop is actually quite intense, and there's ongoing sustained positive G all the way from the pull out of the drop through to the top of the upward spiral after the wing-over inversion. The strength of the G-force does vary throughout the different elements, but you'll be feeling it as you're pushed down in your seat for the first part of the ride. The sustained force is quite surprising for this sort of coaster, and if you're a little dehydrated you could even get a bit of grey out, particularly in the first element. At the end of the sequence of positive G, there's also a nice little pop of airtime right before you dive through the station of Quest. The station theming wasn't quite finished yet when I visited, but the fly-through certainly looked quite cool when we were waiting for Quest to start and Fianna rushed past overhead. The 0G roll that follows is more interesting than I expected, and it's got quite an unusual profile, which is much more shallow than other 0G rolls. There's something slightly unusual about the way you twist, particularly in the second half, as it almost feels like you're being dragged downwards as you spiral, reminding me a bit of Aranguazi's legendary death roll. It's probably something to do with how you enter the element already twisted to the left and exit it twisting it to the right, so you complete about 450 degrees of rotation instead of the usual 360. It certainly picks up some speed during the exit, and it's a really thrilling element. Vekoma still call it a 0G roll, but it feels completely different to ride when compared to the 0G rolls you get on B&M coasters. One thing that I think the coaster does particularly well is for the second half of the ride, it stays low to the ground, giving a great speed sensation. The landscaping also helps with this, as it's a great feeling as you twist through the low to the ground curves. The character of the ride changes at the halfway point as well. The first half is all about the positive G and inversions, but then the ride becomes more like a little bucking bronco, with lots of little pops of airtimes as you twist and jink to the left and right close to the ground. It makes for great pacing, and it delivers a fun ride all the way to the end. Where some rides tend to peter out, this one definitely delivers all the way. The airtime on this coaster is also quite impressive, as it's not something you tend to find on inverted coasters. This may even be the strongest airtime I've felt on any inverted coaster, particularly on one of the bunny hops near the end, especially if you're in the right hand seat. Speaking of the seats, they're very comfortable, and they allow you to feel the airtime while being safe and secure. An interesting change compared to the first suspended thrill coaster are that these ones don't have extra seatbelts, and instead rely only on the lap bar as a means of restraint. The seatbelts on Hals Kopff didn't get in the way, but it's interesting that they're absent in this newer ride. This should speed up the loading and unloading of the train slightly, so it's a change I'm all in favour for, although I'm sure it's likely Vekoma will leave it up to individual parks if they want the additional seatbelt or not. This brand new coaster is also super smooth, although I did notice a slightly unusual jolt during the first drop when riding near the back of the train. I noticed it on multiple rides, and you don't feel it towards the front of the train, but it is quite noticeable in the back. Maybe it's something to do with how the ride disengages from the lift chain or something like that, but it was the only part of the ride that I considered any roughness to it at all. The theming of the new Tir na Nog area looks fantastic, although there's still a few areas that need to be finished, most notably the station of the Quest coaster. There's actually a diorama of this new area near the entrance of the park, and it shows a few other pieces of theming that may be added later on as well. I can't wait to see how it looks when it's completely finished, but even now I still think it looks great. The rocks and greenery outside surrounding the rides look fantastic, although to me there's one thing missing in this land of eternal youth. Shouldn't there be a fountain somewhere, perhaps in the small pond between the two coasters? The exterior of the station building looks amazing, and the detail in the weathered rocks that make it up are all great. The tower that the Quest coaster goes up is another highlight here. There's also some nice music playing in the area which help add to the fantasy feeling of it. I also think it's quite impressive that the Quest coaster fits in so well with the bigger inverted ride. It jumps over Fianna's track no less than 4 times, 8 times if you count it going backwards. You can even get some great shots of the two coasters together when they sync up, and it's just a wonderful look. Inside the Fianna Force's station, there's a video that explains the ride story, where you're donning magical armour in the form of the roller coaster seats and restraint.
I forged some special magical armour to help you along the way. It will let you fly to frightful heights, let you dive down deep ditches, and crush through castle walls.
I can't imagine going into battle with a roller coaster seat stuck to your back would be that effective in combat, but it's all a bit of fun in this world of fantasy. So overall, I think the Fianna Force is a great coaster. It's well paced, smooth, fast and forceful, with a great variety of positive and negative G. It also looks great, and will look even better when the rest of the ride's theming is complete. So now it's time for the big question. How does it compare to the other Vekoma suspended thrill coaster, Hals at Tripsdrill? Most people I spoke to in the park who had ridden both all seemed to prefer La Fianna, and the impression was that it was a much more forceful ride. But to me it's actually quite a tough call. Both these coasters are great, and on paper they've got similar heights and lengths, but the ride experience is still quite different. I'd say Hals at Kopff is more consistent, delivering speed and inversions with a steady high thrill throughout the ride. However, Fianna offers more variety, with a positive and inversion heavy first half, followed by a high speed, twisty, airtime filled second half. It's honestly difficult to place one above the other, as both are fantastic rides. I prefer the look of the trains on Hals at Kopff, as they're designed to look like you're carrying a big rucksack, rather than wearing magical armour, which doesn't even really look like armour at all. I reckon the landscaping around Fianna Force will be much better though when it's all finished. If I'm being forced to pick one, I'm probably going to give Fianna Force the edge, but I still think it's a closer call than most people were suggesting. It's also a strange coincidence that Tripsdrill has its own Fountain of Youth ride, although its version is a log flume in bathtubs, with some bonus nudity thrown in. Either way, Fianna Force and the whole Tir na Nog area are a fantastic addition to Emerald Park, and it's somewhere I'd highly recommend visiting. As a coaster enthusiast, until now, the main reason to visit the park was the Cooling coaster, which may be getting a little rougher compared to when I rode it in opening season, but it's still an awesome ride. With the addition of these 2 new coasters, it makes visiting the park a much more complete experience, and seeing as Dublin's one of the cheapest airports to fly to in Europe, it's a great time to visit the park. Hopefully you've enjoyed this review. I had hoped to be doing my review of Hyperia at Thorpe Park soon, but unfortunately my real job and the ride closing after opening day kinda got in the way of that. But rest assured, when Hyperia reopens, I'll be back with a full, in-depth review, so keep an eye out for that. I've been Rollercoaster David, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in another video very soon.